In this video, we're going to be talking about what's changing in the AAA syllabus and also in the AAA exam from the September 2023 exam sitting onwards. And the big macro news is there aren't any huge changes. Right? It's tweaking rather than anything dramatic. There were big changes last year, right? The new professional skills marks coming in. And if you want to see about those changes, you can see that video on my YouTube channel. So what's happening for this year then? Well, in terms of syllabus changes, these are pretty small. So there's a little bit of a change around quality management, small change in syllabus, but actually a bit of an emphasis change in how it's examined as well. So I could have put that in either place, to be fair. There is a new revised ACCA on group audits, and that does change a little bit in the syllabus for AAA. It does change a few things. So that one is slightly larger, but still pretty small. And again, small changes around the completion and review phase. The bigger changes, I think, actually, for the AAA exam for 23-24 is more of an emphasis change around the examination. So although the syllabus isn't changing much, there's 4 key areas that the examiner has highlighted that are going to be tested slightly differently going forward. So we'll go through those in detail. But first of all, the syllabus changes. So quality management, first of all. Now this has been in the syllabus for ages, right? But it has been enhanced and built up, and it is certainly a much bigger part of the exam now than it was in previous years. So the new content that's come in is around the firm's statement of quality management. So this is for the audit firm, how it maintains quality on the audits that it performs. And it's a little bit like a kind of checklist, if you like, of the things that should be done to make sure that quality is maintained on the audit. So you need a bit of an awareness of that, but more a kind of understanding that quality management should be proactive, on the front foot. So the audit firm shouldn't be doing the work and then at the end going, right, now it's time to think about whether it was good enough. Quality is best maintained when it's proactive and upfront. So things like making sure you're recruiting the right people, making sure you're giving them appropriate training and support and guidance throughout the audit so that they do their job properly. And the emphasis in the syllabus has moved a little bit more towards that, the proactive side of quality management rather than the reactive side. As I already said, it's got a greater emphasis in the syllabus. So it's a bigger part now, therefore more likely to be examined. There's 2 reasons I think it's more likely to be examined. One is there are 2 technical articles that the examiner has published on quality management. Secondly, in a recent meeting I had at the annual tutor conference with the examiner, they were talking about quality management a lot, which is why I'm starting with this in this review. And a third reason is actually in the more recent exams under the last syllabus, the 2022-23 syllabus, we were seeing quality management coming up a lot, and I expect that to continue. So group audits, another area where the syllabus has changed slightly. So the scenario with a group audit is, it's a large company that has subsidiary companies, and we're perhaps the auditor of the parent company, and we're directing the auditors of one of the components, the subsidiary companies, and they're not necessarily auditors that work for our firm. And ISO 600, which is the auditing standard that covers this stuff, has been changed a little bit, and particularly around this kind of relationship between the group auditor and the component. And it's really placing more of an emphasis on the group auditor proactively directing the component auditor with instructions as to how they expect the audit to be done, what materiality should be used for group reporting, any big risks that exist at the group level that they need to be aware of for the subsidiary audit. And things like related parties for the group that the component auditor needs to be aware of and are looking out for when they're doing their detailed audit work. Now, completion and review, another area that the syllabus has changed a bit, but it's actually more around the emphasis in the exam. So the syllabus has been updated and beefed up a bit around the role of the engagement quality control reviewer. Now, an EQR review, you may be aware of that term already. It's sometimes called a hot review that we're doing before the audit report is signed to make sure that the evidence that we've got on file supports the conclusions that have been drawn and we're giving the right audit opinion. So you need to be aware of things like who should be doing the EQR review. It needs to be someone pretty senior, ideally a senior audit partner. Because one of the things they have to do is challenge the audit partner on the work that they've done and the assumptions that they've made during the audit. And if it is someone junior doing the EQR review, they can't really hold an audit partner to account very successfully. When should an EQR review be done? Well, given it's a hot review and we're doing it to make sure we give the right audit opinion, we must do it before the audit opinion is signed. Why do we do it? Well, it's about trying to reduce audit risk. It's about trying to make sure that we don't give the wrong audit opinion. That's why we're doing it before the audit opinion is signed. And what do they do? Well, there's a lot of work that goes into an EQR. But some of those things are challenging the audit partner on the assumptions that have been made during the audit and perhaps reviewing some of the higher risk areas of the audit to make sure that the independent partner is comfortable with the work and the approach that has been taken. Now, before we do the exam emphasis changes, I thought I'd just give you a bit of good news. The good news is that my course has been fully updated for all of these syllabus changes and all of the exam emphasis changes so that you are getting the best possible preparation with me. So all the syllabus changes are in there, all of the exam emphasis changes are in there in the questions that I've rewritten and in all of my debrief videos. So with me, you are in the safest possible hands to give you the best possible chance of passing this really tough exam. So those exam emphasis changes that I've been referring to, and this is where I think the bigger changes are really for you as a student doing the AAA exam. The first of these is the style of the case study question in question 1. Now, if you've practiced some older exam papers, you'll see that there are loads and loads of audit risks to go after. But more recently, we're seeing that there actually aren't very many at all. There might only be 4, 5, or possibly 6 significant audit risks in the scenario. So there's less risks for you to go after, but the examiner is giving you more detail in the scenario to allow you to explain your audit risk in more detail. And that's what they want you to do. They don't want a scattergun approach where you list out or for a tiny amount about 10 or 15 risks. They want you to pick out the 4 or 5 big ones and really develop why they are a significant problem for the audit. Across the whole exam, not just question 1, but also in the 2 25-mark questions, the examiner is giving more numbers for you to use. They're expecting you to do little simple percentage change calculations, and importantly, to use those little numbers you've calculated to add depth to some of your points. You will only score marks for the calculations you do in the AAA exam if you go on and discuss those numbers. There has been in recent exam sittings in 2022, and I'm told by the examiner this will continue going forward, there has been more of an emphasis on your financial reporting knowledge. We've seen some questions, 10, 15 marks, that rely on you knowing quite a lot about relatively obscure accounting standards. Things like pensions, things like leases, not your standard mainstream things like provisions. You know, it's the whole SBR syllabus they can really ask you about. So that makes it super important that you have already studied SBR before you do the AAA exam. You don't have to have passed it, but you do have to have studied it. And in my course, I've really increased the amount of resources that I now give around financial reporting to make sure you've got everything you need to know about all of the key accounting standards. And finally, the examiner has said that this trend that we've seen in some recent exams, like in December 2022, where they ask you about slightly more obscure areas of the syllabus, like the role of internal audit, for example, or auditing a service organisation, these kind of slightly more obscure areas of the syllabus will continue to be examined. It won't be those ones again. It won't be internal audit, and it might, well, it could be, but it probably won't be service organisations again. But the examiners really emphasise the point that in this exam, they will test you on the mainstream things. That will be most of the exam, but do expect to see 5 or 10 marks on things that you're not necessarily expecting to come up. Now, you've got two approaches for that, in my opinion. The first one is to memorise everything in the syllabus, but who's got time to do that? The second approach, and I think the much more effective approach, is to have brilliant exam technique, so that whatever they ask you about, you're really adept at using the scenario to pick out key relevant facts and be able to develop them into an answer, even if you haven't completely memorised that topic area that has come up. And that's the approach that I use in my course, so that you're ready for anything. Right, thanks for your attention. I hope you found this video useful, and best of luck with your AAA studies.